This is the Coach's Wife Life podcast. I'm Kristen Eargle, your host, a former TV sports reporter and fellow college football coach's wife. I'll go one-on-one with the strong women who are the backbone of college athletics and athletics of all levels. And now, Coach's Wife Life.
This podcast is brought to you by Ruler of Hope. Ruler of Hope is a nonprofit that supports medically fragile children. If you'd like to make a tax-deductible donation, you can use Venmo at Ruler-Hope or online at rulerofhope.org.
Hey there, I'm Kristen Eargle, and we have an exciting podcast ahead. But first, I want to talk about something we all know way too much about: moving. Just the thought of that can bring an unsettling emotion. Well, I found a team that can take that load off your plate. It's D1 Relocation. This group can do it all. They can organize your move, coordinate with a moving company, and a trusted real estate agent. They can actually vet key household partners such as schools, insurance agents, physicians in the area. They can even help set up your Wi-Fi and water. It's incredible. So I've come to know this team, which is actually founded by a coach's wife. I think you should check it out, whether you're looking to move now or in the future. It's d1relocation.com. Now on to our awesome podcast. Well, I am so excited to have my next guest, Amy Ingram, UAB's athletic director's wife of Mark Ingram. Amy, thanks for being a part of us.
Thanks for having me.
His official title is Associate Vice President and Director of Athletics. So I'm going to ask you, it's fun to have an AD's wife. This is a fun twist. So describe yourself on game day.
On game day, well, I'm usually pretty busy. I'm alone. I usually kind of have to take care of our family and then get there to entertain our guests. And I'm excited. I'm always optimistic for the game and, hopeful that it's going to go the way we want it to.
Okay, describe your husband in 3 words on game day.
Okay, so I would say he's busy, active. He's moving around a lot and super social.
Okay, so I'm going to run through this incredible, prolific career that you've been a part of. There at UAB, is it year 9? Is that right?
It is. I think it was year 9 at the beginning of May.
Okay, so
which is
year
the
9.
longest we've been anywhere. Our family doesn't know what to think.
And since that time, it's been incredible. Okay, reinstated UAB football, rifle, bowling, raised more than $100 million in cash and pledges for UAB athletics, helped obtain approval for the protective stadium, completed design and construction of $22.5 million football practice facility, and I could go on and on and on. Complete over 20 additional facility projects, and if you're not track athletic directors and their course, that's unbelievably amazing, the accomplishments in that short amount of time. Prior to that, Temple, Tennessee, Georgia, Missouri. Why do you think his formula has worked?
I think when it comes to now as an athletic director and, in leadership roles leading up to this, he's always very focused on making sure that people who are his teammates, in the workforce have the same hard work ethic. And really he's focused on, having coworkers that have high integrity. I think that he always finds that, if you find a good person who's going to work hard, honest, trustworthy, you'll get a good culture. And, that has worked for us so far.
Okay, so tell me all about you, Amy. Where did you grow up, and did you ever envision the life of an AD's wife?
No, I grew up in just north of Cincinnati, between Cincinnati and Dayton, Ohio. Lived my whole life there. My entire family is there. My mother was one of 8 children. My dad was one of 3. Came from a big family. No one moved. No one from my community really moves. Everyone kind of, if they move, they come back. So I kind of did a big thing when I went to the University of Tennessee and always assumed I would come home. I went to school for advertising and specifically thought I wanted to come back and work in the radio television market in the Cincinnati area, in the advertising, and was focused on that until I met Mark. And so we met at the University of Tennessee, and I stayed. And
Okay, so how did you
started
exactly?
my career there.
How
So-
did you meet Mark?
So, we joke, but we met in the classroom 119 of the Glocker Business Building. He will tell you that I was cheating off his paper. That's his favorite thing to say, even though it was advertising 225 or something like that, which was my major. So we met, kind of a funny story. I never understood why he wasn't in class on Fridays. And so I remember asking the girl, why does he always skip class on Friday? She said, "You're kidding, right?" I said, "No, what?" She said, "He plays football." I said, "He plays football for us?" But he played football. So I did not know that.
That's amazing. And then you started dating. What year did you get married?
So we were friends for a good bit. And then we started dating in my junior year, and we actually married 1 month after I graduated in 97.
Wow. Very, very
We've
cool.
been married a long time.
Yeah, that's amazing. And then did you know instantly, like did you follow athletics much growing up? I mean, was this when he was going to embark on the career of coaching or AD life? I mean, was that something that was you followed very vigilantly growing up, college athletics, or is it all new?
Well, it was pretty new. I mean, my dad was an enthusiast. My brother, we always loved sports. I played sports. My dad's business always sponsored like the Bengals. And so we were kind of involved, ironically, in that aspect as far as like going to the talk show. We sponsored the talk show. I saw that kind of aspect of the business. And I did not know what we were about to embark on. And initially when Mark graduated, he worked as a graduate assistant for a while with the coaching staff that had been his coaching staff. So I kind of dabbled starting off in that realm, recruiting, working in recruiting office and being the wife, watching their long hours back in the day when they had to call into the office. So the guys sat there till midnight waiting for the phone to ring, and you couldn't use, there were no cell phones. So it was a different era.
Very different era. I remember that, especially waiting on the film. Do you remember the film had to be driven places?
Oh my gosh. I can remember going there after a Friday night, sitting late, and then finally telling everyone at 12:30, like, go home to your families. They're not calling. It's good. They'll call back.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so you have kids.
We do.
Now tell us all about your family.
So we have 4 children. I don't know what it is about women in athletics, but we always tend to have these gigantic families, which just adds to the interest. But maybe we're trying to make our own sports team or something. But I have 4 children. My oldest, John, is 23. He just graduated from the Naval Academy and commissioned into the Marine Corps. He'll be a Marine Corps pilot. So he's in training right now. And then my second is a daughter, Ann Lauren, and she is a junior at the University of Alabama. And then my third, Charlie, is at Mississippi State. He is embarking on his football career, so he's joined the football team. And my youngest, Audrey, is a sophomore in high school.
Wow. You stay very busy, traveling, going to see everyone, talking in the middle of their dorm.
They're all very active, and they were very, very active in high school. They've all had a big sport that they have followed. Our son went to the Naval Academy to run initially, and our daughter had been a competitive swimmer until college. Charlie played baseball and football all the way through high school and now plays football in college. And Audrey is a competitive gymnast. So we travel all over the country with Audrey. So.
And you're doing most of this by yourself.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's funny, as the career has gone on, he is in some ways more flexible, but he's inflexible. We're flexible until we're not. So sometimes he can adjust his schedule. He has a little bit more authority to maybe adjust his schedule on a day-to-day basis, but but when he works, he works. And so if Audrey has a gymnastics meet in Tampa, it likely is not going to coordinate with his schedule. So we're going to do that alone.
There's some hard shots or things like there's things he has to be it. There's nobody else that can cover it.
There are instances, and we definitely will have to navigate that as our son, he's a freshman on the football team now, and God willing, he gets an opportunity to do his thing in the future. That's going to be the trickiest part, right? They compete on the same days in the same sport where Mark is most required to be. He hits all athletic events. We can't be at every single thing, but traditionally speaking, as far as donors go and things like that, he's going to hit every football game. He's going to travel with the football team every week. They're going to host donors with them. He doesn't travel with every basketball game, but we're at every home game. And he does hit the road with them some as well. But then there's all the other, volleyball, baseball, softball, soccer, golf.
Do you feel the pressure to go to a lot of games? Or you just go, I know that I have to carry the life of the kids. Do you feel that?
We made a commitment, and this was good for us, is that, when it comes to our family, I'm going to put them first always. But fortunately that UAB, I kind of consider that my fifth child. So whenever I'm having to share the love with all of my children, there's often times when, I've had a son running in the state cross country meet and a daughter competing in the state gymnastics competition. And we've had to divide and conquer. And our children are pretty adaptable to that. So I kind of handle it the same way with UAB. I get there as often as I can, and I enjoy it. I want to go watch just like I want to watch my children.
Yeah, that's neat. Now, you've had a ton of success at UAB and prior to that, but not every day, like we talked about on the podcast, is the press conference day where you're thrilled and you finally made it as an AD and wife. And there are tough moments. So what stood out to you over a career that's unfolding still, some of those tougher moments, and what did you rely on to get through those moments?
Well, specifically when we came to UAB, with football needing to be reinstated, it really felt like that was something that the community needed. That was a challenge. Mark had such a short amount of time to show the athletic department, the administration, that there were funds in the community, that they could reinstate it, and that the community really needed it. So initially coming here, that was a challenge, but also something that's what he thrives in. When he took the job, he told us, I can do this. I can bring football back to Birmingham, Alabama. There are bigger things to overcome than that. But specifically, I would say initially, one of the hardest things for us was, throughout your career, there comes a point, I know on our second turn around at the University of Tennessee, which we considered home, that's where I graduated, that's where he played football. We had an administrative change in which our athletic director, who we were very closely connected to, decided to step back. And that changes the dynamic of your athletic department. New administration, they have people, coworkers that they want to bring along with us. And so there was an administration change. And initially, that was the first time that we were moving on that wasn't necessarily our choice. And because it was such a place so close to our hearts, I know that was the first time I took it very personally. And I had to really quickly adjust and recognize that, it's not personal. It isn't personal. And it was the changing force for us to be able to go on and be in that position later, because you do have to make the best, team. And the best team doesn't mean that there isn't someone else who knows how to do that job. It's your team. But if we hadn't made that change at Tennessee, we probably wouldn't have been sitting here. Every action is a reaction. And it was a great learning experience for both of us.
Without question. I know pretty much every wife out there can if they haven't identified with you right now, they will. I mean, at some point,
It's part of the
going
game.
to happen. And I think you're wise there to realize, like, and that's even worse because it's your alma mater. That's even harder.
It was. Those were my friends from college that, you make your friends wherever you go. But like I said, it was the first time that we didn't decide that we were moving.
Yeah.
And so that will happen.
Yes.
Business, it is going to happen, whether it's, lots of different reasons. There's always going to be change.
Yeah.
That's
constant. And for the wives, I think we have to work through that and not allow ourselves. I mean, mourn in the moment, but I think a thing that I've been convicted of and continue to work through is just not being bitter of their situation and realizing that God has a purpose in all things and it's going to work together. And I mean, that's kind of how we look at it.
That has happened, and there is not a challenge that our family has walked through, hard though it may be. I'm not going to say that all of them are wonderful experiences at the moment, but even, with selling homes, we made a decision early on with our children that for me, it was easier to wait until my home was sold and then join him. It also helped for my children to kind of create a longing for their father, so that oftentimes they were not necessarily excited, but when we talked about where we were moving and missing daddy, so by the time we got there, they were all in on the new team. And I didn't do temporary moves. That just worked good for us. So I didn't move somewhere 6 months, move again. I kind of stayed hunkered down, continued life the way it was until we had a new situation to move into. But sometimes those moves were lengthy. I lived my entire pregnancy in Georgia without Mark. I found out I was pregnant after she left or after he moved, and I delivered 2 weeks after I joined him in Tennessee. So 3 kids under the age of 6, under the age of 6 and pregnant. So that was fun.
I bet you don't really miss that moment, or those moments, right?
But you talk about God provides. I just kept saying, please, 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 like whatever happens. This was during the housing crisis of 2008. There were so many new homes in the community we lived in. I think people could just pick a home based on the wall color. There were so many options. And I just said, please just let this get wrapped up before I deliver, so that I can just tie that loose end. And on the day that my only child at the time in school was in kindergarten, on that day, a family walked in, first time, made an offer, and in 2 weeks we were in Tennessee.
That's God's provision.
And I looked back and I said, there's so many things I begged and questioned, but I was provided for immediately in the way that I needed to be, just at the very last second. But it's a lesson learned. Sometimes I have to be whacked on the head, but it always comes. It always comes.
Sometimes I have to write down those moments to remind myself,
right?
Like he will provide. This is going to work for our good. I can't see it right now, but when we reflect back on the times like you have right there, he did carry us in that moment. Like you only had one in school. That's exhausting.
Oh, I laugh. I jokingly say, I'd go to bed at 10 o'clock and I would get a text from my realtor that would say, can we show your house tomorrow at 8:30 a.m.? I was like, awesome. I'd love to do that. Thank you.
For sure. What's your routine to stay grounded and steady in this business? I mean, you talked about these. How do you not go up and down so much with the?
Well, Mark and I always say, you don't get too high, you don't get too low. Like you can't bite at every, line that comes bobbing by. But, for us, we just I think for our family, we're just us. I mean, we focus on our family and they keep us so busy. There's kind of no way not to stay grounded. They kind of keep us that way. Anyone who knows us knows Monday through Friday, Saturday, Sunday, we're on the go. If our children don't have an event, we're looking for something, we're scouring the list of sporting events that UAB has available for us to go catch, because we know there are so many times, or at least I know for me, my time is scattered with all of the children. So I'm trying to get to as many things as I can on the weekend. We don't know how to sit still. It's part of who we are. We really don't. If I'm leaving town today and Mark is joining the football team tomorrow, but he wants to catch our high school football game tonight. So he's going with our daughter to the high school football game. Then he'll drive to Louisiana, Monroe, to catch our game tomorrow. It's later in the day, so he didn't have a lot of responsibility during the day tomorrow. So he's kind of playing, dad and supporting locally to all the kids, even though we don't have a kid on the football team anymore.
I was sitting there going, you don't have anybody on the football team.
I know, but there's only 4 home games and he won't catch many. So he said, I'll catch that game, go with Audrey. And then I'll drive to Louisiana in the morning and be there all day with our team, and he'll come back Sunday.
I love that. I love that perspective of being present and making it work on that's incredible. How much involvement would you say, well, we'll talk more about this, but in terms of helping him in his career and moves and preparing him now, if you think about the very first opportunity he had at leading, who was the first person to give him a shot at leadership? And what do you think he did to prove he was ready?
There's been steps along the way, because initially Mark started, I said, he did the coaching thing for just a small time before he recognized he wanted to move into administration. So initially he started his career in marketing. And I think at the very basic level, the first opportunity was Mike Hamilton at the University of Tennessee, our first go around, had told him that he wanted to create more of a fun fan experience during basketball games. Mark, that's your job. And so we had been in, I think, Chicago. Mark and I had gone to Chicago, and he saw some things implemented in a professional setting. And so he came back and he created a thing called the Fun Patrol. And he went and created and got all of these students to work. And they created, he had the initial gun where they shot the T-shirts. This had not been done yet. Wow. He found that. And they ran around and gave, T-shirts out. And it was an interesting kind of way he talked about. He could give them $10. He could say, show up and I'll give you $10 or $20 to work for an hour and throw these T-shirts out and run around and be excited. And they wouldn't come if you did that. But if you told them that you would give them a free T-shirt, they signed up. They wanted a T-shirt. And so he's like,
too funny.
$10, maybe not, but a T-shirt, I am there. So that was his probably initial group of people. He created a rotating group of 30 or 40 kids that were the Fun Patrol. And then, in a more traditional setting, as he showed his success, he moved from marketing into development, which is fundraising at the University of Tennessee, and then ultimately moved to the University of Missouri, where he managed that, fundraising effort. And, Mike Alden was the person who hired him there. And I think that is the jumping off point of where he started developing his teams and kind of making his mark on the athletic world.
And how did you support some of this? I mean, he's coming home with ideas. Do you guys talk things out? I mean, how does that work in your house?
We do. He probably would say I'm more opinionated than he wants sometimes. But, initially when we first started and I was still in my career, we both kind of came from a sales background. He was asking people for money. And initially, when I started in radio sales, I was too, but just different product. So we both kind of bounced that, those ideas off each other. And, along the way, I tell him if I think something is good or if I don't. Sometimes he takes my advice. Sometimes he doesn't. But But we always talk about everything as far as like a major decision, specifically moves and things like that, prior to making any of those choices.
And how long did you work in advertising sales?
So initially, I really didn't work very long in radio sales, even though that was kind of my, stepping off. I transitioned into pharmaceutical sales about 18 months in to my career. And I did that I think I did that through when we moved to Missouri. So John was still born, but it became very difficult for me. At that point, we were 8 hours from our closest family member. Mark's parents were living on the coast. It was like 20 hours at that point. And it was hard not having any kind of family support. And my job required me to travel. So I kind of transitioned away from my career, that was one of the hardest things I think about his type of career. We had to make a decision early on. Could I have continued to work? I could have. Would it have presented a lot of challenges? Yes, because he worked late, I worked late, and so this is what worked for our family, for me to kind of come back home and kind of be the head of the household. And generally that is everything. Like, we quickly figured out, like, Mark goes to work and handles things with work. If the garage door falls off the house, he's like, good luck to you. Do we have an air conditioner? It's one of those things. So that is not, if we put a new roof on the house, I'm putting a new roof on the house.
I love this. You don't bother him with the extras.
Well, I mean, we talk about it. I mean, I don't think there's anything that we do that we don't talk about, but I was capable of doing those things. And, so that's just kind of how it switched for us. I truly manage our house, and he manages the stuff outside of the house. And then we kind of meet in the middle with family.
I joke with people. I'm like, I buy houses and sell houses in his name. You know what I mean? Like,
oh my goodness. When we moved to when we moved to Birmingham, I remember I had 2 houses specifically in the community neighborhood that we wanted. And I told the realtor on Thursday night, I said, let's take a look on Friday. I'd like to put an offer in Saturday morning. He said, well, what if you don't find something? I said, well, I'm gonna buy a house today. He said, well, gosh, I've never had anyone say that. I said, well, it's a house. I'm gonna buy it today.
I'm a house today. You're like a realtor's dream, though.
Well, I told him, I said, unless there's dead bodies hanging in this one, I'm pretty sure that's the one we're going to get. Tell them they've got an hour, and otherwise we're moving on to number 2.
I love your perspective. You're like, it's a house. We can sell it if we need.
It's a house. That's another thing that we had to learn early on, which I didn't necessarily learn. That comes with hardship. You become, oh, I have to have this dining room, or I have to have this. You have to have a place that is a good school system for your family. Exactly. You have to have a good commute for your husband and for yourself to get back and forth to the school. But otherwise, you can paint a wall and you're going to put your couch in there, and it's going to feel like your house at the end of the day.
I know. I don't get too emotionally tied to it anymore, where it's like,
No,
it's got to be functional.
It's functional, right? You find the things that mean the most, and you will quickly figure out it's not whether or not there's a dining room or a 3-car garage or whatever the deal is.
It is, because I feel like in this industry we truly are faced daily with what's important and what's not important.
Mm-hmm.
You're dealing with student athletes and bettering the student athlete experience and impacting them positively, and to me, we have a vision of a lot of times of how fast raising children goes, because we see how fast that 4 years, and now with the transfer portal, sometimes it's 1 year you get with student athletes, right? And so we see how quickly it goes. It's almost like we have a lot of perspective just because of do you feel that way?
Definitely. Well, with my own children, it's like a slippery slope all the time. Someone said to us, oh my gosh, I can't believe John's graduated college already, or that Ann Lauren's almost finished with college, or Charlie's there. raising children is like dropping a wet baby at the top of a slide and trying to catch them. You're just moving all the time. And athletics is like that. It's always changing. The dynamic is always changing. You hire a coach and they have a new opportunity. You hire a coach and it ends up not being a good fit. You hire a coach and they have an illness. Anything can happen any day. I don't think I've taken a vacation or planned a trip where Mark isn't in a closet putting out a fire or doing something. That's just part of our getting up in the morning. I can remember we had our family here for Easter, and I think we had a basketball change early, and I could hear Mark doing interviews out in his car because he was trying not to wake up the family, doing like phone interviews so that he could fly out.
Yeah.
He was doing initial interviews so that he could fly out, the next morning because it was Final Four time and we needed to make a decision quickly.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, what do you think that you do that is creating some success that people may not realize behind the scenes that is enabling him to have the success, whether it be fundraising or some of those pieces that you think?
Well, are you specifically saying like me from behind the scenes? Yeah. Well, I think for myself, for anyone who works in athletics, it is an extremely demanding job. I mean, there are other, obviously, careers that have that. The added aspect of living a public lifestyle is also an interesting piece. I think for me, I kind of make sure that I'm locked and loaded as much as I can be here because like anything, Mark tells his student athletes, if they're not tidied up in the classroom, if they think that's not important, and if they assume that's not going to creep into their playing ability, they're wrong. It's a distraction. And so I try to limit as much of the distractions. That doesn't mean that I keep our family things separate. I try to keep a balance. I try to handle our stuff professionally too, even the way I present it to him. I can't be coming in chaotic. But when we make a move or when we transition, I always tell everyone, you've got to be committed as much as he is, because if you begrudgingly do something, that's never going to work. Like you have to say, all right, I'm in. It may not be the community I initially thought, but I'll find it. There's something wonderful about every place. There's something wonderful about everyone. You just got to find it. And so I think if you're positive, then, we just kind of keep our family unit trucking along. And I think that helps to keep things kind of balanced for our house.
Positive attitude. What's the process you use to make big career decisions? To me, that's also hard because you're like, oh, is this obviously get an opportunity at AD, you take it. But rewind when you weren't choosing AD or not AD, when it was kind of like, oh.
When you're making the stepping stones and you're moving for just a little bit of money or just,
right.
So for Mark, we thought about, you have to think about what's the next stepping stone to get you to the end goal. And so we always, he would present an opportunity and say, I think this is an opportunity for growth. He usually looks for a job that is going to provide some new learning experience for him, some new opportunity, some new way, whether it was managing an additional sport. We might be doing development here, but at this new school, he might have an opportunity to have sport oversight, which is extremely important. So that once you move to the end goal of being an athletic director, you have that kind of understanding of how each sport works. Yeah. And it's not just hiring a coach and the X's and O's and the wins. It's the budget and the finance and the compliance of it. And there's a lot of moving pieces. So he generally would present an opportunity like that. We joke in our house, the way it goes, he tells me a place, I immediately get online and start Googling the community and the housing market. It is just a funny thing we do.
Yes.
And then I tell him all the things about that. Did you know this? Did you know that? Did you know the cost of living? I always look at the cost of living so that I can present whether or not that move is financially realistic. I think that's important, because sometimes you make a decision not necessarily about finances, but you need to make sure that that's not going to impact your family in such a negative way that the stress of that job is bigger than the learning experience, because there were opportunities along the way that may not have on paper seemed financially amazing, but they offered and provided a good learning or a good jumping off point. But you got to do your homework. And so we always did that.
Okay, so now you're an AD's wife. You've been an AD's wife for quite some time. What are some of the things that you looked at other staff, or just ideas of your own, that you implement now that you are in leadership?
Well, I often think, and now I'm in an opportunity with my children kind of out of the house, that I can be a little bit more present. But the things that I really appreciated about the people before me, the women before me, were that those who had focused on their family showed me that they had their family dynamic really kind of locked and loaded. That is what impressed me. I feel like that made me the most comfortable when I was around someone who was welcoming. My family was welcome. They recognized that I might be by myself. There were times that when our kids were little and our husbands were traveling for the games, that we'd get together and watch the games. I looked so forward to that, because it's lonely being an athletic spouse when your children you're by yourself. Everyone else's husband is home on Saturday. They're all doing family things. They're going to the pool. They're spending time at the lake, and you're putting on soccer cleats by yourself because they're not home. They're gone. And so having another community, so other women, I try to be the same way, like recognize that we're all just trying to take care of our families and, make them welcome, in our box. Any of our athletic spouses are welcome, husbands, wives. I really, really enjoy it when they bring their children. I can always tell when they're nervous, like, oh gosh, you spilled the popcorn. I don't care. I don't even care. Like, we're so excited to have them there and let their families be a part of it, because they're long days. They're long days. And so, the women who showed me that kind of grace, that's what I try to extend to our staff.
Amy, you're incredible. I can tell you right now. Okay, so 99% probably of this audience is coaches' wives.
Mm-hmm.
You've seen great examples in your life of coaches' wives, whether it be football, basketball, baseball, whatever it may be. What do you truly think helps in building culture that a coach's wife can do?
Well, I think culture kind of happens naturally. I don't know that you can manufacture a good culture. I think you can lead by example. I think, again, for a coach's wife, and for any of us who are regularly in the public eye, you've got to maintain those highs. You've got to maintain those lows. It is easy to kind of fluctuate. And at the end of the day, presenting a calm front and recognizing that we are ambassadors to our university as well. I think it's important. Mark has never had anyone work for him. No one works for Mark. Mark works with his staff. Those are his coworkers. And so, therefore, I don't work there, but I am an extension of that. And so I try to be a good teammate. And I think that's what we can all do. Be a good teammate, be a good representative of our university. I remember to tell my children that, they are too, setting an example of what is expected, when we're out. They're representing not only our family, but their dad's job. And so I think that's how we can all do it. We can all just, kind of be even and graceful and take care of your family in the best way that you can. And you will develop a good culture, because the younger women who come along you're teaching, and they will follow.
Oh, I love that. Okay. What's it like to go through a hiring process when your husband is hiring a head coach?
So that is a unique experience because by nature, I want to be friends with everyone. I have never met a stranger. I want everyone to love it, So I'm not obviously involved in the specific hire of that coach, but I'm also always available. I generally will um, meet with the spouse, spend a few hours showing them around the town, answering any questions about our community, because I think it's important that they have a full picture of what's available, whether it's for them in the career world, what is it that they're looking to do, their family, what part of the community I think would service them best for their needs for children. So I'm always available to talk about that, have coffee. And I think when Cass Dilfer came to town, we were on our way for our son's playoff football game, and our daughter Audrey sat in for 4 hours while we just chatted in a coffee shop and got to know each other. So that's kind of my role, is just to answer any questions that they may have about community and the university and what's like.
What advice would you give a coach's wife whose husband is interviewing somewhere?
Well, again, you can't take things too personally, because by the time that you have a seat at the table as a coach at that level or an athletic director, you've put in the work, you have the talent. No one is questioning that you can do what it is they're asking you to do. So just remember that they're trying to make the best fit for their university, their community, and therefore give you the ultimate success. So if it's not this job, then don't be discouraged. Your fit is out there. This just wasn't it. And stay positive. It can be long, and especially when you're chasing that dream, you're wanting the next step. But I think just be supportive. I think our spouses can get really discouraged, particularly if they're sitting at the table for those meetings and it's not quite happening yet. But that's the process. There's a learning process in all of that, and the time will come.
Oh, I love this advice. Okay, so what's one thing you think a coach's wife could do to help support a program? I mean, what could we do that could help us out?
Well, I think, again, always representing yourself well when you're in the community. Anytime that you can be involved in the community is a positive. Oftentimes I'm tied up with my family, but I'm still representing our university whenever I'm even at my family's commitments. I'm oftentimes in green. I'm oftentimes labeled up in a blazer, something logoed blazer, whether I'm playing tennis or I've got a blazer hat on. I think being involved in your community in a positive way is always a great way to give back. And just I think focusing on your own family always, if you are representing your family well, you will represent the university well, you will represent your husband, and therefore you will make a good impact on the community.
What do you think would surprise people to know about the life of an AD's wife?
So busy, and it can be lonely. This is an interesting thing compared to when we've been in different portions of the athletic department. There aren't other athletic director wives in your office, and in some capacity, everyone recognizes that while Mark would say no one works for him at the end of the day, I also recognize that he does hold a lot of cards.
Sure.
So I think that's interesting in that we were very involved. We go to a lot of functions, but at the end of the day, it can be kind of isolating. We're no longer in the development office with all of the other development people or the marketing department. We have a department, in administration, but it's a different place. You make friendships with people, but you recognize that they may also be guarded. And you have to respect that. They have to protect themselves and their, you know, it is business and transactional in so many ways, but I try to keep it as honest and pure and um, normal as it possibly can be. But it can be lonely sometimes.
And I also think that it would also be hard to be an AD's wife and realize maybe at some point that we may have to make a change. I think that would be another dynamic.
That is extremely difficult.
Like,
that is extremely difficult.
Oh, like the balance of all that you want to develop relationships with everybody, but then you're just like, how do you feel like other AD's wives talk about that? Do you ever talk about that with them? Like, how do they navigate that?
Well, I mean, we don't have a lot of opportunities. We have, it was unique for me that several of like when you get together with your conference, COVID happened. So there was several opportunities that were missed for me to socialize and intermingle with other athletic, AD wives in those communities for several years because it wasn't available. And then I've had some times with my children that I couldn't join. But I think I have always tried to approach everything. What you see is what you get. And so I'm genuine with that person. And if we get to a place where we need to make a change, it's the same advice I've said now, like it's business. They know it's business. It's not personal. I still wish that person all the best. Sometimes they don't feel that way. And I just try very hard to recognize what I felt like when we had to make a change that wasn't necessarily my choice, and hope that it's a learning experience for them along the way, and that, later down the line, they'll extend that grace to someone else when they're in that position.
For a coach's wife, a lot of our time is devoted to or a part of in some way recruiting, whether we're talking to moms or at events, the student athletes and their parents and being involved in that. And there's a lot of visits throughout the year and things like that. So for you, I would imagine you're part of that some, but you're part of donors and creating relationships there. How much of your time do you think is donated to that, to building those types of relationships?
A lot. So, when people ask what Mark does for a job, probably no one would get it wrong. A little bit of everything, right? But what people assume is the lion's share, the coaching, the hiring of coaches, the management, the going to the games. They assume that's the 90% of his job. And it is a huge portion, and it's only a small portion. Today he's at a board of trustees meeting. So he'll sit and listen to hours worth of administrative talk about the university as a whole and their plans for that. He'll present to those people. He, presents to the presidents. He presents to those board. The governor cares what we do, and people don't realize that. But the university is the largest employer in the state, and so the things that you do and the way you impact the community matter. And so you are sitting at a lot of meetings. You go to a lot of donor functions. You go to things at the president's house. There is probably an event once to twice a week at the minimum during the year. And when football hits, it's much larger. So a lot of time is dedicated outside of what the public eye sees.
And a silly question to go along with that. You have a lot of different outfits you can wear and the colors. I mean, do you have somebody that helps you with like style? Do you have a store you go to? Do you go, I wore that in front of that group the last time? Here's some silly questions. I mean, how much?
Yeah, no, I'm pretty easygoing. So like I would tell, I occasionally will have people point out to me, where'd you get those? Where'd you get that? I'm always on the hunt for something green or gold. Yeah. I am a truly game day decision dresser.
Oh,
so really? I fling myself in my closet and whatever I find that day. And look, I'll buy my stuff anywhere. If I see something cute at Walmart, I'll get it. I don't care. So, but I truly wear my colors all the time. I'm not wearing green today, which is funny, but usually it's one of my favorite colors anyway. So I always have it on.
I know. That's fun. Okay, how do you maintain balance in this life that never slows down?
I don't think we are a very balanced family, but that works for us.
Yeah.
We always have something to go to. Our children are very active. We had a competitive runner, we had a competitive swimmer. Our third was a football, basketball, baseball until high school, and then just football, baseball, which was all year round. And then our baby probably has the largest commitment in that she's in the gym 20 hours a week as a gymnast. And then we travel all spring to her events. So we don't know probably balance, but that's part of our life too. We don't see work as a separate life. And for us, that's a lifestyle. Athletics is a lifestyle for us. And so it's not unusual to see a family group text that says, Blazers tip off tonight at 6. Who's coming? And then we're coordinating who we're picking up where, who are you bringing with you? So we don't sit at home. That's not part of us, but that's our balance is that it's our lifestyle.
You're all in.
We're all in.
What's some of the most rewarding aspects to you about being an AD's wife?
Well, first of all, watching, it sounds cliche, but we see a lot of student athletes who come through who may or may not have taken the academic route if athletics had not been presented as an opportunity. And so I love to see those students earn a degree. That's extremely rewarding. But also, I really love watching when we have a player have an opportunity to go to the next level. We love that. And then we get really excited when staff members, find their own success. So we follow a lot of people at a lot of different schools, and the athletic world gets really small the longer you're in it. And so we have friends and colleagues all over the country, and I love hearing when someone else becomes an athletic director, or when someone else is managing a development office, or when one of our players is, graduated from the G League and he's now, on a regular NBA team. So that's always
love it. Okay, rapid fire. You ready?
Okay.
Who's the most famous person in your phone?
So a couple of years ago, Mark and I's phone merged, and I got all of his contacts. So I know I've got Peyton Manning for sure. We went to school with Peyton, but I know Peyton's in my phone. I've accidentally dialed that, not meaning to, voice dialed. That happened a few times. I think.
I'd have to pause you. Did you hang up right away, or did you just see if he answered?
No, I think I realized. I think I sent him a text. I think I realized, and I was like, sorry. Butt dial. So, I think I was trying to voice text. I don't know why I thought I was trying to call, Peyton. I don't know what I could have said to make that happen. One time I stood in as Sheryl Crow in a Missouri ad. She was a Missouri graduate, and I got to be a fill-in until she got there.
Nice.
It's like Sheryl Crow, but I was her placeholder for
I can see it.
advertising.
I like it. That's incredible. Okay, what's one item on your bucket list that you have checked off and one left to go?
I have run 2 marathons, so I've checked that off. Bucket list, I think 2. I'd like to jump off out of a plane, and I think my son, who's in the Marine Corps, initially I wanted to run a marathon with him, and I don't know that we'll coordinate that effort, but so I'm hoping to maybe do a plane jump. Mark hates that bucket list item. He hates it, but I still want to do it.
Seems a little nerve-wracking. Okay, who are the last 3 people you have texted?
Let's see. I don't know. Probably a child. Let's see. Oh, well, you. Tell me about the puppy. My daughter Audrey and her gymnastics coach to tell her that she would join them in a competition, something coming up.
Funniest account you follow on Instagram?
Oh gosh, I can't think of the name, but I follow this funny farm with baby goats. Let me tell you, my children love to make fun of me, but at the end of the day, no matter what horrible thing has happened, if you watch funny animal videos, you cannot go to bed stressed out. And so I send them all kinds of videos of puppies, or usually the text says something like, "Are you sending me a dog video?"
I
am.
love it. You
I
can
totally
send it to
am.
me. I'm all about the dog videos. I love the dog. And is your dog with you right now?
She is.
She's doing so good. Look at this baby.
So Franny joined our family about 3 weeks ago. So I embarked on the puppy world. It has been 25 years since we've had a puppy. We've had dogs, but we've rescued. But our 16-year-old asked if we could get a puppy. And I don't know what I was thinking in the middle of football season, getting a puppy. I now hire a babysitter to take care of my dog.
Isn't that wild? They're children. They are just children. Okay, what about your life impresses your kids?
Well, okay, so I don't know. I think off the top of my head, they would tell me my food. So that's kind of a common thread in our house, that they're very complimentary of my cooking. I had to figure that out early with 4 children, that we ate at home. But you had asked me about that. And so I asked my daughter last night because I couldn't think of anything. I was like, they are not impressed by me at all. But she wrote me something, and she told me to read it.
Please read it.
She said she has very hard work ethic. She does everything she can for her family and puts everyone before herself. But then the part that she wanted me to write was, she slays at tennis.
Oh, I love it.
She has never seen me play tennis. I don't know why she thinks that. I think because I tell her I'm good at it. She has no idea if I am. I took it on in my 40s. It was something I picked up. And so I tell them all the time what a rock star I am. They have no idea. I could lose every match.
Love it.
Unless they're secretly coming to watch me.
It's the advertising degree.
I said, what's impressive about the fact that I play tennis? Lots of people play tennis. That's not impressive. And she said, Mom, you're 50. I said, oh, okay.
It's good.
So you think it's impressive that I'm old and that I play tennis? And she said, yeah.
You're not old. Okay, this is where I disagree with your daughter. You're not old.
Oh, gosh.
Okay. I am sure you've heard a lot of walk-up songs in your life. So what would be your walk-up song?
Okay. That's a hard one.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say one that came to mind might not be appropriate for a family show, but I would say I think it is a song by Mary J. Blige, and I think it's I'm terrible with song names. It's Family Matters or Family Time, Mary J. Blige. That's a good one.
That's a good one. I love it. This has been so much fun. Thank you so much for being a part of us today.
Well, I've enjoyed being with you.
This podcast is brought to you by Ruler of Hope. Ruler of Hope is a nonprofit that supports medically fragile children. If you'd like to make a tax-deductible donation, you can use Venmo at Ruler-Hope or online at rulerofhope.org.
For a replay of this episode or previous episodes, visit coacheswifelife.org and follow us on social media at Coaches Wife Life.